Sophia Bennett, 34. My sister told everyone I was an unfit mother because I love my children too much, and she thought she could prove it by taking them from me. She learned the hard way that there is a difference between concern and obsession, and that crossing that line can destroy everything you thought you controlled. I live in Austin, Texas, in a quiet neighborhood not far from Zilker Park, in a modest 2-story house with a wide porch and a backyard big enough for a swing set and a small vegetable garden. My life has never been glamorous, but it has always been stable. I work remotely for a marketing firm based in Chicago, and my days are structured around conference calls, school pickups, soccer practice, piano lessons, and bedtime routines. My children, Noah, who is 8, and Lily, who is 6, are the center of my world. I raise them with structure and warmth. They have responsibilities. They make their beds. They help set the table. They get limited screen time. They also get hugs whenever they want them, bedtime stories every night, and surprise pancakes on Saturdays. I believed everything was fine. My sister Vanessa Miller lives in Dallas. She is 37, single, and has always had strong opinions about how everyone else should live. She visits often, usually unannounced, sweeping into my house with sharp heels and sharper comments. At first, her remarks felt harmless. She would watch me cut apples into slices for Lily and say I was turning her into a princess who would never handle the real world. She would see Noah struggling with his math homework and suggest that I was too patient, that I should let him fail once so he would toughen up. I would smile politely and ignore her. But the comments escalated. She started showing up almost every weekend. She would sit at my kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, and then look up and criticize everything from the brand of cereal I bought to the way I organized the toy shelves. Would grow up unable to survive in a city like New York or Los Angeles. She claimed I was giving them too much, that I was spoiling them with attention and stability. I listened longer than I should have. One afternoon, after she watched me help Lily practice reading, she crossed a line. She said I was ruining my children and that one day they would resent me for making their lives too easy. She accused me of being selfish, of using them to fill some emotional void. I felt something inside me snap. I had spent years building this life for my children after a painful divorce. I had moved from Denver to Austin for a fresh start. I had saved, planned, and sacrificed. And there she was, sitting in my kitchen, telling me I was destroying the 2 people I loved most. I told her that now I understood why she did not have a husband or children of her own. I told her that perhaps it was easier to judge motherhood from the outside than to actually live it. The silence that followed was thick and electric. Her face went pale, then red. She gathered her bag slowly, her movements tight with controlled fury. She said I would regret speaking to her that way, and that I would get it all back. I did not take her seriously. I thought it was just wounded pride. For a few days, everything returned to normal. I took Noah to his soccer practice near Lady Bird Lake. I helped Lily glue glitter onto a school project about the Texas state flower. We baked cookies. We laughed. I told myself that Vanessa would cool off. Then the small things began. My neighbor, Mrs. Hernandez, mentioned that she had seen Vanessa parked across the street one afternoon while I was at the grocery store. I brushed it off. I assumed she was passing through. Then I noticed that Vanessa had been asking distant relatives in Houston and San Antonio questions about my parenting. She contacted my ex-husband in Phoenix, claiming she was concerned about the children's well-being. He called me confused and slightly alarmed, but he knew me well enough to dismiss her claims. Still, a knot began forming in my stomach. I confronted her over the phone. I asked her why she was spreading rumors. She denied everything. She said she was simply worried. She insisted that I was too emotional to see the truth. The conversation ended with her telling me that sometimes children need to be saved from their own parents. That sentence lingered in my mind longer than it should have. The week that followed was uneventful on the surface. I worked, I cooked, I folded laundry while watching the skyline of downtown Austin glow at sunset. The children were happy, they were thriving, their teachers had no concerns, their pediatrician had no concerns. I kept telling myself that Vanessa was just dramatic. On Thursday night, I double-checked the doors like I always do. I set the alarm. I kissed Noah on the forehead and tucked Lily's blanket around her shoulders. I remember standing in the hallway, listening to their steady breathing, feeling grateful for the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. I went to bed thinking about a presentation I had scheduled for the next morning. At some point before dawn, I stirred. The house felt strangely still. There was a silence that did not feel ordinary. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and saw that it was 5:42 in the morning. The sun had not fully risen. Something pulled me out of bed. It was a feeling, heavy and urgent. I walked down the hallway toward the children's rooms. The floorboards were cool beneath my feet. I pushed Noah's door open gently. His bed was empty. For a split second, I assumed he had crawled into my bed during the night, something he used to do when he had nightmares. I hurried to Lily's room. Her door was slightly open. The nightlight glowed softly, casting a pale yellow circle on the wall. Her bed was empty too. My heart began pounding so loudly that I could hear it in my ears. I checked the bathroom. I checked the closet. I ran back to my bedroom to see if they were somehow hiding there. The house was silent. Their backpacks were gone. The small pink sneakers Lily wore to school were missing from the entryway. Noah's favorite blue jacket was not on its hook. I stood in the middle of my living room, staring at the front door, which was closed but unlocked, and that is when the reality hit me all at once. My children were gone. Update 1. I did not scream at first. I froze. For a few seconds, I stood in the middle of my living room, staring at the unlocked front door, trying to force my brain to come up with a rational explanation. A sleepover I forgot about. An early morning field trip. Some harmless misunderstanding. But I knew I had not arranged anything. I knew I would never forget something like that. Then the panic hit me like a wave. I ran outside barefoot, the early morning air in Austin still cool and gray, the sky just beginning to lighten over the quiet rooftops. The street was empty. No bicycles, no backpacks, no sign of my children walking toward the corner. I shouted their names into the silence, my voice breaking against the stillness of the neighborhood. No answer came back. I rushed inside and grabbed my phone with shaking hands. My fingers felt numb as I dialed 911. I remember pacing back and forth across the hardwood floor, staring at the front windows as if they would suddenly reappear in the driveway. I told the operator that my children were missing. I described Noah's brown hair and the small scar on his chin from when he fell off his scooter near Lady Bird Lake. I described Lily's long blonde braids and the tiny birthmark on her shoulder. I explained that their shoes were gone, their jackets were missing, and that the door had been unlocked. The operator told me to stay calm and that officers were on their way. Calm was not something I could access in that moment. My chest felt tight. My thoughts were racing in violent circles. Who would take them? Why would anyone take them? There had been no custody dispute, no threats, no strange cars parked outside, except for that one time my neighbor mentioned seeing Vanessa. The police arrived within minutes. 2 patrol cars pulled up in front of my house, lights flashing against the quiet morning like a scene from a nightmare. Officers stepped inside, professional and focused. They asked me questions I could barely process. When was the last time I saw them? Did anyone else have a key? Was there any sign of forced entry? Did I have security cameras? I remembered the small camera installed above the garage door and the one facing the backyard. One of the officers asked to see the footage. My hands were trembling so badly that I struggled to unlock the app on my phone. The footage from the night before showed nothing unusual at first. The driveway empty, the porch light glowing softly. Then, around 4:17 in the morning, there was movement near the side of the house where the backyard gate was located. The camera angle did not fully capture the figure. It was just a shadow slipping along the fence line. My stomach twisted. The officers immediately escalated the situation. More units were called. They began canvassing the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen or heard anything. A patrol car slowly drove down the street while another officer walked along the sidewalk scanning for footprints. I felt like I was watching someone else's life unfold. This was not supposed to happen to me. This was something I read about in headlines, not something that invaded my quiet street in Austin. As the sun rose, the neighborhood filled with flashing lights and murmurs. Mrs. Hernandez came out in her robe, eyes wide with concern. She hugged me tightly and promised she would check her own security cameras. I clung to that small gesture of solidarity. After the officers gathered initial details, they told me the case was being treated as a possible abduction. Hearing that word made my knees nearly give out. They asked for photographs of the children. I ran upstairs and grabbed framed pictures from the hallway wall, the ones from our trip to the river walk in San Antonio and from our vacation to the Grand Canyon last summer. I handed them over like pieces of my heart. Then I started calling everyone. I called my ex-husband in Phoenix first. He answered groggily, confused by the early hour. When I told him the children were missing, his tone changed instantly from sleepy to alarmed. He swore he had not taken them, that he had not even left Arizona. I believed him. Despite our divorce, he loved the kids. He promised to book the earliest flight to Austin. I called my parents in Houston. My mother began crying immediately. My father asked practical questions, his voice tense and sharp. They promised to drive up as soon as possible. I called cousins in San Antonio, old friends in Denver, anyone who might have heard something or seen something. Each call made the situation feel more real. Then I called Vanessa. She answered on the third ring. I told her the children were gone. I remember how my voice cracked as I said it. There was a pause on the other end, and then she reacted with what sounded like shock. She said she could not believe it. She asked how it happened. She said she would come to Austin immediately and help search. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of relief. Despite everything that had happened between us, she was still my sister. Blood mattered. Family mattered. She arrived by late morning. I remember seeing her car pull into my driveway. She stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses, her expression serious and composed. She hugged me tightly, telling me we would find them. She began asking questions, walking through the house, inspecting the doors and windows as if she were part of the investigation. She told the officers she had been worried about the children recently, but had never imagined something like this would happen. The search intensified throughout the day. Officers distributed flyers with the children's photos around downtown Austin and surrounding neighborhoods. An Amber Alert was issued. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications and calls from friends who had seen the alert on their screens. The reality of seeing my children's faces on a public emergency broadcast shattered something inside me. Vanessa stayed close to me the entire time. She brought me water. She told me to sit down when I felt dizzy. She suggested checking nearby parks, even though officers had already done so. She drove me to Zilker Park in the afternoon, insisting that sometimes children wandered to familiar places. We walked along the trails, calling their names, our voices echoing against the trees. Every hour that passed felt heavier than the last. The police asked again if there was anyone who might want to hurt me or the children. I thought about the argument with Vanessa. I thought about her threat that I would get it all back. But standing there in the park, with her by my side, scanning the horizon for any sign of my children, the thought seemed irrational. She looked genuinely concerned. She spoke to officers with urgency. She made calls to friends in Dallas, asking if anyone had heard anything suspicious. By evening, the search had expanded beyond my neighborhood. Officers were checking highway cameras. Volunteers had started gathering, neighbors and strangers alike, offering to distribute flyers around Austin, Cedar Park, and Round Rock. I felt grateful and broken at the same time. That night, I did not sleep. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by half-empty coffee cups, staring at the empty hallway where my children should have been running with laughter. Vanessa stayed on the couch, saying she would not leave me alone in a time like this. She kept telling me we would find them, that the police were doing everything they could. I believed her. The next morning, we went back out to search again. We drove through neighborhoods, stopped at gas stations, asked clerks if they had seen 2 children matching their descriptions. I replayed every memory of the past week in my head, searching for a clue I might have missed. I blame myself for not changing the locks after the argument. I blame myself for underestimating how far resentment could go. But I never once allowed myself to suspect the person standing beside me. As I walked through another quiet street in Austin, scanning every parked car and every passing face, my mind was consumed with fear and hope in equal measure. I was focused only on finding Noah and Lily. I was not thinking about lies. I was not thinking about betrayal. I was searching for my children, completely unaware that the person promising to help me was the one who had taken them. Update 2. By the 3rd day, exhaustion had replaced panic, but it was a colder, more focused kind of fear. The Amber Alert was still active across Texas. My phone would not stop vibrating. Reporters had started calling. Volunteers were still searching parks and neighborhoods across Austin. Vanessa had returned to Dallas the previous evening, claiming she needed to check something at work, but promising to come back the next morning. That morning never came. Instead, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. It was a woman from a private elementary school in Dallas. She asked if I was Sophia Bennett, the mother of Noah and Lily. My heart nearly stopped. She said 2 children matching their names had been enrolled for temporary assessment that morning by a woman claiming to be their guardian. My ears rang. I asked for the name of the woman, Vanessa Miller. I do not remember hanging up the phone. I remember the police officer sitting at my kitchen table, seeing the expression on my face, and standing up immediately. Within minutes, everything shifted. The atmosphere in my house changed from anxious searching to strategic precision. Officers began making calls. A detective who had been assigned to the case asked me every detail about Vanessa's home in Dallas. I gave them the address. I told them about her silver SUV. I told them about the argument we had. I told them about the threats I had dismissed. We drove to Dallas that afternoon. The trip from Austin felt endless. I sat in the back seat of an unmarked police vehicle, staring at the highway signs blur past. Every mile felt like an accusation. I replayed every moment of the past week, every supportive hug, every concerned look Vanessa had given me while standing in my kitchen. The betrayal had not fully landed yet. I was suspended between denial and rage. When we pulled into her neighborhood in North Dallas, my hands were shaking again. 2 patrol cars followed behind us. The officers instructed me to remain in the vehicle until they assessed the situation. I could barely breathe. They knocked on her door. She opened it. From where I was sitting, I could see her through the windshield. She looked composed at first, then confused when she saw the officers. One of them stepped forward and spoke firmly. She tried to smile. She stepped aside as if inviting them in. And then I saw them. Noah was sitting at her dining table with a coloring book. Lily was on the couch watching a cartoon. They looked clean, calm, and heartbreakingly normal. For a split second, relief flooded my body so intensely that I almost collapsed. They were alive. They were unharmed. I pushed open the car door despite the officer's warning and ran toward the house. One of the officers followed closely behind me. When Noah saw me, his eyes widened. Lily jumped off the couch and ran straight into my arms. I dropped to my knees on Vanessa's polished hardwood floor, holding them so tightly that they squirmed. Vanessa stood a few feet away, her arms crossed, her expression shifting from forced calm to something colder. She started explaining rapidly that she had found the children wandering near my house early that morning days ago, that she had panicked and taken them to keep them safe, that they had been happier with her. She said she had planned to call me once things settled down. She claimed she was protecting them from my instability. The officers were not convinced. I looked at my children and asked them what happened. Noah's voice trembled as he explained that Aunt Vanessa had come into the house early in the morning. He said she told them that I had been taken to the hospital and that she needed to bring them somewhere safe. Lily said she remembered being told not to make noise. They both said they had been confused but trusted her because she was family. My stomach twisted violently. The detective asked Vanessa how she had entered my house. She said I must have left the door unlocked. The officer calmly informed her that camera footage showed someone entering through the backyard gate and disabling the side alarm panel. That required knowledge of the code. Only a handful of people knew that code. Vanessa's composure began to crack. Then the detective asked about the paperwork on her dining table. I had not noticed it at first, but there were printed forms partially filled out. Guardianship petitions, temporary custody requests. She had not just taken them. She had started a legal process. She had contacted a private attorney in Dallas about emergency custody. She had attempted to enroll them in school under her supervision. The room felt like it was spinning. She tried to frame it as concern. She claimed I was emotionally unstable. She referenced our argument. She told the officers that I had admitted to being overwhelmed. She painted herself as the responsible adult stepping in to save two children from a mother who was too attached, too soft, too indulgent, but she had not expected the children to speak so clearly. Noah told the detective that Aunt Vanessa said I would be angry if they told anyone she had taken them. Lily confirmed that she was told to say she wanted to stay in Dallas. Those small details shattered whatever thin story Vanessa was trying to construct. The detective stepped aside and made a call. Within minutes, the situation escalated. Vanessa's tone shifted from confident to defensive to panicked. She realized she was no longer controlling the narrative. I stood there holding my children while officers methodically documented everything. The paperwork on the table, the children's backpacks placed neatly by the staircase, the overnight bags she had packed for them. It was not an impulsive act. It was planned. When the officer informed her that she was being detained pending investigation for kidnapping and custodial interference, she looked genuinely stunned. She had believed her version of events would hold. She had convinced herself that her intentions justified her actions. They placed her in handcuffs in her own living room. She looked at me as they led her past us. There was disbelief in her eyes, as if she still could not comprehend that I would call the police on her, as if blood ties should have shielded her from consequences, as if taking my children without consent was a minor disagreement rather than a felony. I did not cry. I told the officers everything. I described the argument in my kitchen. I described her threat that I would get it all back. I described the suspicious car sightings and the rumors she had spread. I handed over my phone with the security footage. I told them about the call from the school. By the time they escorted her out of the house and into the patrol car, the illusion had completely shattered. My sister had not been helping me search. She had been hiding what she stole. And now, surrounded by police lights flashing against the quiet Dallas street, she was finally being detained for it. Update 3. The weeks after Vanessa's arrest felt unreal, like I was walking through someone else's nightmare with my name attached to it. The house in Austin was finally quiet again, but it was not the peaceful quiet I once knew. It was cautious, protective. Every creak at night made me sit up in bed. I installed a full security system, changed every lock, updated every password. I refused to let fear define my home, but I also refused to underestimate anyone ever again. Vanessa, on the other hand, shifted her strategy almost immediately. From the moment formal charges were filed in Dallas County, she tried to paint herself as misunderstood rather than malicious. Through her attorney, she claimed she had acted out of concern. She insisted that the children would have been better off with her, that I was emotionally unstable, that I was spoiling them and setting them up for failure. She described me as overprotective, irrational, incapable of raising strong, independent kids. It was the same narrative she had whispered in my kitchen months before, just now dressed up in legal language. Sitting in the courtroom and hearing her attempt to justify kidnapping my children as an act of love hardened something inside me permanently. She did not look remorseful. She looked frustrated that her plan had collapsed. When our eyes met across the courtroom, she tried to hold my gaze, as if daring me to doubt myself. I did not. At one point during the proceedings, as her attorney argued that family conflicts should not result in criminal punishment, Vanessa broke down theatrically, insisting that she only wanted to save the children from what she described as my suffocating parenting. She repeated that they were happier with her, that she could offer them better opportunities in Dallas, better schools, a stronger upbringing. Listening to her twist reality felt like watching a stranger wear my sister's face. When it was my turn to speak, I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I explained the timeline. I described the security footage. I recounted the threats she had made after I told her to stay out of my parenting. I described how my children had been instructed to stay quiet and lie. I spoke about the paperwork found on her dining table, the guardianship petitions already partially completed. I told the court that this was not concern. It was control. She tried one last time to reach me outside the courtroom during a recess. Her confidence was gone. Her posture had collapsed inward. She said she never meant for it to go this far. She said prison would destroy her life. She begged for mercy, framing it as a mistake between sisters. For a split second, I saw the girl I grew up with in Houston, the one who used to braid my hair and share secrets late at night. Then I remembered waking up to empty beds. I turned away from her. I made it clear that I would see this through to the end. She had crossed every boundary that existed. She had weaponized family. She had tried to erase me from my own children's lives. There was no path back from that. The trial moved faster than I expected. The evidence was clear. The camera footage, the children's testimony given through child advocates, the falsified narrative she had attempted to build. The court found her guilty of kidnapping and custodial interference. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison. When the judge read the sentence, Vanessa looked stunned again, just as she had when the handcuffs first clicked around her wrists in Dallas. It was as if she genuinely believed consequences were optional for her. As officers escorted her out of the courtroom, she did not look at me this time. Afterward, I walked out of the courthouse into the Texas sunlight with Noah and Lily holding my hands. The air felt different, lighter. Not because I felt victorious in some dramatic sense, but because the uncertainty was over. There would be no more surprise visits, no more whispers about my parenting, no more shadow lurking by my fence at 4 a.m. Back in Austin, life slowly rebuilt itself. Therapy sessions helped the children process what happened. We created new routines, new traditions. I took them to the river walk again that summer. We visited the Alamo. We laughed in ways that felt genuine rather than forced. Vanessa's name became something we no longer spoke in our home. I did not feel revenge in the way people imagine it. I felt closure. I felt the quiet strength that comes from standing your ground when someone tries to rewrite your reality. She believed she knew better than me. She believed love could be measured by control. She believed I would fold under pressure. Instead, I protected my children. I trusted my instincts. I saw it through. 2 years in prison will not fix what she broke, but it drew a clear line that can never be crossed again. And for the first time since that morning, I woke up to empty beds. I sleep peacefully.